panel for being here. Senator Grassley?
Yeah. I want people to think about if whether it's done by just government decision or by the bankruptcy courts, if student loan debt was forgiven, more than half of that money would flow to families in the upper 40% of income, the top 25% of households in the United States with incomes above 173,000, now holding 34% of all outstanding debt. So my question to Dr. Akers, what are your thoughts on the immediate student loan forgiveness, and do you believe that this would be a regressive policy?
I do believe it would be a regressive policy. I think it's a terrible policy idea. Not only is it regressive, but it creates bad incentives for future borrowers. I just wrote a book advising people on how to pay for college. And if this cancellation were to happen, I'd be advising people to borrow even more tomorrow than they're borrowing today. And that's the problem that we create with that sort of sweeping forgiveness plan.
I've already referred to several bills that I've introduced in this Congress and previous Congresses. For instance, my Know Before You Owe Federal Student Loan Act would require schools to inform students before they borrow about their likely debt compared to their likely salary based on their program of study. Combine that bill with the College Transparency Act, which I also support. Students would know how much they're likely to make based on their chosen major in a specific college that they attend using data from previous graduates. So Dr. Akers, do you think this kind of information could help borrowers avoid taking out loans beyond what they can afford to repay? And what do you think better information for students would do for the cost of colleges?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of improving the information that students have available to make decisions about their investments in themselves. I think the government can only do so much in regulating institutions to ensure that quality exists and people are their own best advocate when it comes to shopping for colleges and knowing what's right for them. I would love to see people be more aware of what the value of a degree is so that they can put pressure on institutions to charge prices that are in line with value. It's asking a lot of the consumers, but I think it's some place that we can go effectively.
Yeah. Dr. Akers, do you have anything to advise beyond what I've already talked about my legislation would do?
No, not particularly. One thing I'm concerned about, especially as we move into conversations about accountability and risk sharing, is the lack of discretion that financial aid offices have to counsel students or restrict their levels of borrowing. I often speak to financial aid officers who know that they're giving loans to students that are unaffordable, but they don't have the ability to constrain them from borrowing further.
Mr. Chapman, do you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion we've just had?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Grassley. With respect to student loan forgiveness, we've never supported blanket student loan forgiveness. We believe the government's role is to provide access and opportunity and serve as a backstop for those borrowers who struggle at the back end, and we think that would be better use of money than a blanket discharge of loans across the board. For that reason and for some of the other reasons around moral hazard and the like. So that's what we would add to that.
The cost of attending college continues to increase. As I mentioned in my opening statement, the cost has doubled in the last 20 years, growing twice as fast as inflation. College continues to grow the administrative state and build lavish facilities off the never-ending stream of government money. Dr. Akers, what do you think could be done to help reduce the cost of colleges? And secondly, should schools have some sort of skin in the game to hold them accountable?
I do think that colleges should have some skin in the game, meaning their financial accountability for when their students struggle financially to repay their debt. What can we do to ease up the inflationary pressure on this? I think we need to make it reasonable for people to choose not to go to college. That's the only way that institutions will face the pressure that it takes for them to charge prices that are more in line with their value. Consumers are put pressure on all kinds of sellers of different goods to charge prices that are in line with what the product or the service is worth. And there's no reason that can't happen in education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.